today is April 27th, 2022. I'm Derek Fildebrandt, publisher of the Western Standard. You're watching The Pipeline. Today I'm joined as usual by the always wonderful Dave Naylor, news editor. How you doing?
Congratulations, my friend.
Thank you.
Birth of Fritz. How's he doing?
Fritz is big, fat, strong, and healthy. He's very German. He was exactly on time. His due date. There's only a 5% chance of hitting your due date. And like a good German, he arrived exactly on time. Very punctual.
Following the orders already.
You had to go there.
At least, we had a quick whip round in the newsroom and got him a nice little pair of lederhosen.
Yeah, baby hosen. That was
baby
very
hosen,
kind.
yes.
Yeah, the staff was very kind around the office. Got him all sorts of goodies, including his baby hosen.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
You're
very
welcome.
nice, both of you. Also joined by the other guy, Corey Morgan, opinion broadcast editor for the Western Standard. How are you, Corey?
Good. Always opinionated.
Well, you're paid to have an opinion.
Yes.
You're the opinion editor.
I always prefer.
That's not what I've heard.
Well, not well.
Oh, we're off to a good start already.
First,
been reading the bathroom wall.
yeah. First, I want to thank all of our Western Standard members for your continued support. My God, you guys are continuing to sign up in huge numbers. With your support, we're continuing to hire new staff right across, not just the West, but also putting people into Ottawa, places like that, minding Ottawa's business, as they would say at Blacklocks, providing you with more content, high quality, independent journalism, bailout free from the government. And we do that with your support by becoming a Western Standard member. If you're not yet a member of the Western Standard, please go to westernstandardonline.com, click on membership. You can sign up for $10 a month or $99 a year to give you unlimited access to independent, bailout-free Western journalism. Let's get into the topics. Fun stuff today. Twitter. Oh, Nico, make sure we add in some sound effects after. Some explosions and screaming.
Exploding heads.
Exploding heads. Twitter, the Tweety bird is being set out of the cage. Elon Musk has bought Twitter. The Twitter board of directors did everything they could to stop it seems, but at the end of the day, they had a fiduciary duty. It is sold. We're going to talk about that, what this is going to mean for free speech, not just in Canada, but right around the world. This is a huge development, and we're going to talk about some of the political fallout here in Canada, some of the reaction from the would-be censors of the internet. Alberta doctor / lockdown aficionado / NDP activist Joe Vipond, COVID Joe, is the safest man. He is the bubble boy. He is the safest man from COVID in Canada, and he caught COVID. He didn't just catch COVID. He's spreading it coast to coast from Ottawa back to Calgary. He is dropping off trinkets of COVID everywhere he goes. It's just delightful, exquisite hypocrisy. As Corey said on his show this morning, hypocrisy, Joe Vipond is thy name. We're going to talk about this just delicious story. And the federal government has called an inquiry, as they're required to by legislation, into the invocation of the Emergencies Act used to quash the Ottawa truckers' uprising. All sorts of games being played into there, not really talking much about was the government justified in invoking effectively martial law, but in how bad were these protesters? That's really what it is. Inquiry's off to a very, very bad start, and all sorts of misinformation and lies still being peddled by federal politicians who invoked it themselves. Before we get started, though, we got to thank one of our wonderful sponsors, one of my favorite organizations around, the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. As the regular watchers of the show will know, I've been a member of the Canadian Shooting Sports Association for well over a decade now. I trust these guys to defend my right to own, use, and purchase firearms safely in Canada. They're doing fantastic work, lobbying the bloody politicians, making sure they understand, doing their best to make sure they understand the difference between an actual military assault rifle and something that just looks scary. Speaking of scary rifles, just the other weekend was the SHOT Show here in Calgary, the big famous Calgary gun show. I was there, Corey was there, some of the other Western Standard staff were there. I normally buy guns at a gun show. I bought a sword this year. I couldn't help it. I bought a sword. Corey, you bought something cool, right?
Not at the show, actually, but yeah.
Yeah.
I got inspired there and ended up picking up an SKS later.
SKS. For the government watching, that is not a military-style assault weapon, but it looks pretty cool.
It's got a bayonet.
I mean,
well, it's 'cause
I don't hunt. I personally don't hunt with bayonets, but I hear Corey does. He jumps out of the tree stand and just.
Well, I hunt without success, but it's nice to have the bayonet handy so I can cut the meat to make sandwiches while I'm waiting for game to come by. It's a practicality thing.
It's got the cougars on the front lawn now too, right? So
Yeah.
you can see him running at the cougar.
He's charging cougars. Corey was late today because he was charging cougars with bayonets. Bayonet charge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Charge of Corey's brigade.
Charge of Corey's brigade. Anyway, if you want to be able to charge cougars with your unregistered bayonet, you need to support organizations like the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. See what I did there? Right back to our sponsor. Okay.
Do you want Corey to give the URL?
Yes. What's the URL?
It's cssa-cila.org.
There you go. Check them out. Sign up, become a member of the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. I'm a member. You should be too. Let's talk about such a fun story. Twitter, Tweety Bird has been set free. Elon Musk, the most interesting man in the world, is now the sole owner of Twitter. Dave set it up.
Well, he made a massive bid the week before, I guess now. Sent it to the board. It was going to be $44 billion, well into the $50 range per share. The board panicked. Staff panicked. Oh no. And they basically rejected it. So Elon went about his business and he went and got bank money. He got it all financed, threw in 20% of his own wealth, which is quite considerable, obviously. And I think he basically started the process of going to individual shareholders and saying, your company's not going to grow anymore. You might as well take my bid. And the board finally capitulated. They've accepted the offer, causing worldwide panic amongst the woke. Twitter staff themselves seem to be in a complete meltdown. That they're going to have to work for this horrible guy. It's the end of the world. On the other hand, you've got people like Donald Trump Jr. getting 87,000 new members or new clicks. Followers. Thank you. New followers an hour since he was reinstated. Tucker Carlson reinstated. Lots of people that were banned now reinstated. And Twitter has come out and said they were wrong. Musk has come out and said Twitter was wrong to censor the New York Post when they were doing the Hunter Biden laptop stuff. So the woke has panicked. The sponsors of free speech are elated. Good times ahead for Twitter. And Donald Trump's launching his own social media account, Truth?
Yeah,
Truth next week.
Yeah. Corey, just give us some of the best examples. I know there's been some here, there's been tons abroad, but just the sheer gripping panic that, God forbid, there would be less censorship on the internet.
Oh, the hyperbole. I mean, the one fella I responded to, I can't remember his name. There were so many because I like rubbing their nose in it. Because so many, again, they're flouncing too. They're saying, well, I'm leaving, I'm out of here. And it's been a few days and I just like retweeting him. And
still here?
You're still here. Because they won't leave. It's all talk. But one was saying, I'll remain now, he said, because I'm going to stay here to battle Nazis just as they battled Nazis in the past. Dude, Nazis, you're a hero. You're going to war. But that's how crazed some of these woke people are over the fact that it's just going to be unrestrained. If it's true hate speech, if it's truly violent, any of that stuff, it's still going to be knocked off there. Mm-hmm. I mean, Musk isn't saying he's going to open it up to make it a dangerous place or a hateful place. And he's never demonstrated himself to be that sort of individual. What they're afraid of is that they won't censor stuff. That's the truth of it. And that's what we're seeing. And we're seeing how coddled and comfortable they got in that echo chamber of censorship. And they're horrified. They'll have to actually answer questions. They'll have discourse. They'll have differing opinions. And it really has exposed them. And just like one other thing I get a laugh out of, as much as they all, of course, loathe Trump, look, this screwed Trump more than anybody. Mm-hmm. Because if there was any chance his new platform was going to take off really well, Twitter still had to remain a place that was cracking down on conservatives through shadow banning and all those things. Now that they're not doing that, Trump isn't going to get nearly the traffic to this new platform he's trying to get going. So he'll be more upset than anybody.
One of the things I understood they may be doing is they're trying to get rid of spams and trolls,
Mhm.
right? And making it so you can't have an anonymous account. You know, you need to show yourself, for lack of a
Blue
better
check
word.
marks for everyone.
You know, and that would be so good. You know,
Yeah.
just to not have to deal with the person who's got one follower who's spewing terrible stuff all over the place. So that's good. The other interesting political angle is what are the Liberals going to do? I mean, they're all set to try and censor the internet in various ways, shape, or form. How are they going to handle this? How are they going to handle Twitter and its censorship?
So we're going to come to that in a second. I know some of the attacks on Elon Musk have been actually racist in and of themselves. He's from South Africa, and they've said, "Oh, what are you going to? This is going to, he's going to go back to his apartheid roots, oppressing people of color and things like that." The fact that a man was born in a country doesn't mean he shares the ideology of a bygone, discredited regime. It's absolute lunacy what's been going on. But I think let's now get into what you were saying, Dave. The Canadian government's reaction, what they're going to do, and some of the other censorious governments around the world. I know Germany, a lot of countries like that are trying to bring in heavy regulations of social media platforms, including Twitter. I've always found it baffling that Twitter or Facebook would give a crap what a country like Canada has to say. Twitter's not a Canadian company. It's not regulated by Canada. It's on the internet. And unless the Canadian government is prepared to force internet providers to block Twitter like it's the Chinese Communist Party, there's nothing they can really do. And I have a feeling that a man like Elon Musk, who bought Twitter for one real purpose, to set it free, as he would put it, free speech in the modern town square. I have a hard time seeing Elon Musk saying, "Well, Justin Trudeau told me that I have to do this, so I'm going to comply." What are the chances that Twitter says no, and then we get into kind of a crisis in terms of the Canadian government's attempts to control the internet?
Well, it's been one of the cornerstones of what they've been trying to do for months now. They want the internet censored. They want to be able to control everything that Canadians hear. So it's got to be setting up for. I mean, Musk would be delighted to take on Justin Trudeau, I'm sure. You know, battle of the minds there. But what can the government do? I don't know. I mean, they can't ban Twitter, surely. Can they?
I think short of, well, the CRTC controls a lot of the internet, essentially the internet company, internet providers. I suppose they could attempt to go full Chinese Communist Party style and say Twitter is banned in Canada. But that seems to be a bridge too far, even for these guys. They might like to, but they probably would never get away with it through Supreme Court challenges and things like that. As terrible as the Supreme Court is, I'm pretty sure the Supreme Court would not stand up for banning Twitter like it was a kiddie porn site or something. So I can foresee very easily a circumstance here, Corey, where the Trudeau government passes this new social media censorship legislation, and they send this to Elon Musk, and he says, "Go F yourself." What can the federal government do in that case?
Not much, and I think that's part of why the establishment is freaking out. I mean, Musk he's just fascinating. I mean, him and himself, he's a pure disruptor. I mean, he's got that power behind him. Nobody is controlling him. I mean, I know there's conspiracy theories, but he's going to do what he will, and he makes it pretty clear to the world. He's got more money than the Canadian government almost. So what are they going to do to him? So when you can't control somebody, though, you're fearful of them. I mean, he's also a little bit erratic. He's definitely eccentric. I don't think he's going to do anything dangerous, at least to your common person, but he's certainly dangerous to the established order. I think it's the big question mark about what he's going to do that scares them more than anything.
I love it. Chaos. He's an agent of chaos, and I love it. It's just so beautiful. Okay. Well, speaking of spreading chaos, Dr. Joe Vipond. I can't even say. Dave, tell us what Dr. Joe's doing. And give us a little background on him for those who don't know too.
Typhoid Joe, as I like to call him. He is sort of the media darling for the mainstream media. Every sort of pro-lockdown rally, he was there, dressed to the nines in his masks and his scrubs, and even with a stethoscope around, and
He's got to check the heart of everybody in the crowd.
everybody in the crowd. And he was the go-to guy for the mainstream media. Oh, yes, we must lock down. We're all going to die. I think it was Corey was one of the first people that actually exposed him as basically one of a huge donor to the NDP. So he, but that still didn't stop the mainstream media from him being the go-to guy. So fast forward to year 3 of the pandemic, and Typhoid Joe travels to Ontario, complete with his basically toxic mask, tubing, and air, carries around an air filter, right?
For respirator.
For a respirator.
He travels like Darth Vader.
Yeah. So he arrives in Ottawa and somehow manages to get COVID.
How? How's that?
I don't know.
Toilet seat.
Toilet seat.
It'll get you every time.
Maybe he was drinking after 10 o'clock.
That could be
have
it.
been.
He passed curfew.
It could have been.
Really.
So he tweeted this out. He tweeted his positive COVID test. And then lo and behold, he's got a video of himself walking around Parliament Hill. Right? So Ontario health regulations state if you test positive for COVID, you must isolate for 5 days.
And did Typhoid Joe isolate?
Just to check his mini bar total, I think, before he went for a walk around. So he says he's following all the rules. Looks like he's not to me from the outside.
And what was he in Ottawa for?
Some sort of conference of pointy-headed people.
No, it was a climate activism or something. Of course, so
because don't forget he went over to Scotland for the big one over there, even though we're not supposed to travel and all that sort of stuff. So he gets COVID, goes around, walks around. Even somebody tweeted, "You're more of a danger on Parliament Hill than all the truckers were for spreading these diseases." So now he's got to get back to Calgary somehow. So he's decided going to rent a car and drive. I've done that drive 3 days minimum at 12 hours a day. It's a long, hard slog. But he's going to do it somehow, not interacting with another single human being, and not spreading his COVID droplets across 4 provinces. Don't see how he can do it myself, but I'm sure his tweets will keep us breathlessly informed on his cross-Canada travels.
Corey, I don't even have a question for you. I'm just going to unleash you
It's just his staggering hypocrisy. I mean, of the highest of levels, And we got the smatterings of this last summer when you sent me out to cover one of his protests, and I went out there, and there he is, all masked up and goggled and screaming. It was the pro-lockdown protest, saying "Lock me up, lock me up." And then he went off to do some side media interviews, and he took off his mask for it. So he's 2 feet from someone else. Like he's always been a hypocrite, but this time he's outdone himself. And I'm starting to think he's more than just a hypocrite. He's an idiot. I mean, I know he somehow got himself as a medical practitioner, but it doesn't mean he's not an idiot. He's showing it. I mean, he did figure out, I think, with enough people screaming at him, that 6 hours after saying you're positive for COVID and then going out and doing selfie videos on Parliament Hill, a popular tourist area crowded with people, might not be a good idea. So he deleted that. And then says he's going to do a road trip across the country. Says he checked with the Ontario, and as our reporter checked, what the Ontario site says, must, and it's in big, bold black, must isolate for 5 days after a positive test. He's breaking every rule he's pushed. I mean, just a few months ago, people are digging up all his beautiful tweets and shoving them back in his hypocritical mug, and he deserves it, and it looks bloody good on him. Some of it, he was calling for people to be locked up for 14 days if they even came in contact with a traveler who may carry COVID. This was only a few months ago, much less if you tested positive for it. Like, and the thing to get me is, how many hours of airtime has this medical miscreant gotten on mainstream media? They keep going to him. They keep talking to him like he's an expert in something. He's a fool. And I bet you within a month or so, we're going to see him on CBC or CTV as an expert explaining to us why we should lock ourselves up because we're a danger to society. That's all I got.
Not much chance of him coming on your show, is there?
Probably not. Well, he's welcome, though, by all means. Come in studio. I'm vaccinated.
Corey?
Yes.
I want you to invite him.
Okay.
I want you to invite him.
I will.
And Corey will be polite because, he's always polite.
Always polite to guests.
He's
yes.
polite to a guest, even if the guest is a twat. I'm gonna censor myself there.
Yes.
I didn't say it. But Corey's always polite, even if they might not deserve a polite reception. He's polite to our guests. Yes, that's the decent thing to do. I'd love to see him on. I have a feeling he won't, but hey,
Nothing to be lost in asking.
he loves the camera. We'll
Yes,
see.
he certainly does.
Okay. Well, before we move on to our next topic, Corey, why don't you tell our listeners and viewers why they should check out Bitcoin Well?
Why should they check out Bitcoin Well? Well, because if you're, digital currencies in general, I mean, they're complicated, they're scary, they're a lot of people are new to it. You need to be led into it in some ways for a lot of people if it's new. Bitcoin Well is a trustworthy company. I think that's a lot of the biggest problem with these digital currencies. You're not sure if you know who to trust, if it's legit. These guys are Alberta-based, they're on the ground, they're publicly traded, and they give one-on-one service. So it's not, as I like pointing out, some call center across the planet that's telling you about these things, or you go on a website and a little pop-up window comes up with someone to chat with you. No, live one-on-one across the table with a person talking to you about it. They're there to educate you, walk you through digital currency, see if it is for you. It might not be for you. I mean, they're a good, honest service, and they're legitimate. They never hang on to your money. It's non-custodial, so you always have it. They're just a facilitator to get you into the digital currency world. When we got a government that, as we're going to talk about in the next subject, is prone to coming in and seizing your bank accounts and stealing your money, I think you'd be crazy not to put it in a few new spots, and Bitcoin is certainly one of them. So bitcoinwell.com. Take control of your money.
Check it out. We all three of us sitting around the table here, we all use Bitcoin Well. It's the way to go. Keep the government's grubby hands off my dollars. Actually, forget dollars. Oh, screw dollars. I like Bitcoins. All right.
You'll get a little Fritz college fund going with Bitcoin.
There we go. It's actually not a bad idea. Donations welcome.
Yes.
All right. So the federal Liberal government in Ottawa has called an inquiry as per a requirement of the Emergencies Act. They had to call an inquiry. I suppose they took some very interesting interpretation of the Act's language, because this Act has never been used before. The last time it's been used was in its previous incarnations as the War Measures Act. This Act is supposed to have a few safety valves in it, one of which is that there has to be an inquiry called within a certain period of time afterwards to report on the reasonable use of invoking the Emergencies Act and those kinds of powers. Was it justified? Was it a genuine threat to Canada's national security and sovereignty and borders that could not be solved with existing legislation? That inquiry has been called, but the Liberals have taken an interesting interpretation of it. The mandate of the inquiry is not into, was the government justified based on some real threat? The inquiry is essentially, you can elaborate on this, Dave. Were the truckers that this was called against bad?
Bad truckers. Well, Trudeau left it till basically the very last hours that he had the legal opportunity to do so, to call this inquiry. He then appoints a liberally appointed judge who's had connections to the Liberal Party, not surprisingly. But he does have the power to call and get witnesses to testify. No doubt the Liberals will hide behind cabinet confidentiality. Oh no, we can't talk about that. But interestingly, that's been overturned in Alberta. Dr. Hinshaw is going to have to testify about that. Mm-hmm. But there's also another inquiry that's already started. That's the House of Commons inquiry. And a couple of stories today that we have on this site left me gobsmacked, absolutely gobsmacked. Our Justice Minister, Justice MM, I call him, Marco, was testifying about why he brought in the Emergencies Act. And there are two stories out of it. He said, well, the truckers were frightening and they were threatening to burn down buildings. And you'll remember that story at the heart of the time. Somebody went in and a very poor attempt to burn down a building, and everybody jumped up and down and blamed the truckers, and they were trying to do mass murder and burn the buildings down, and the horror of the horror. Now that's already been debunked. The Ottawa Police Service has investigated and says it's got nothing to do with the truckers. Mm-hmm. Yet our Justice Minister is sitting in front of this House of Commons committee yesterday saying that was one of the reasons. It's still propagating the fake news.
I hate to interrupt it. Public Safety Minister, actually.
Oh, I'm sorry, right. Public Safety Minister. And then in the same session, he says that one of the reasons they justified bringing in the Emergencies Act was because of what CBC was broadcasting. CBC, I mean, you're gobsmacked now, just like me. And we all know that CBC, much of their reporting has already been debunked.
Yeah,
they've
the
had
Russians
to issue corrections. They tried to link it to Vladimir Putin. One of the reasons they brought in the act was because of a CBC report that it was all foreign funded, all this media flowing in from out of the country. And that wasn't true, just not true at all. So even though all these stories are being debunked, they're still bringing it up as the reason they did it. I mean, they look stupid. They really do look stupid. And if you're watching the CBC and you're basing your political decisions on what the CBC shows, God help this country.
Corey, do you think so? The Liberals have more or less already invoked cabinet confidentiality when it comes to the parliamentary inquiry or from the House of Commons inquiry into this. I'm guessing they're going to make the same attempt to invoke cabinet confidentiality as it applies to the judicial inquiry. Although that is not an ironclad defense, as Dave mentioned. We've got the case going on here. It's not an inquiry, but it's a court case into the in Alberta. Here we've got Dina Hinshaw on the stand testifying around was it use of lockdowns and arresting people, beating up kids for playing hockey. Were all these things reasonable from the threat of COVID? And she's been invoking cabinet confidence. Judges here have stricken that down. I'm not sure how much of that parallel is going to carry over to there, but do you have any sense that this inquiry is actually going to turn up something embarrassing on the Liberal government's invocation of the Emergency Act, or do you think that it's likely that this is going to help them skirt around it?
Yeah, if it turns up anything, it'll be by mistake. I mean, they've appointed a judge who's clearly Liberal friendly. As you said, cabinet confidentiality isn't ironclad, but you need a very strong-willed justice to want to start trying to cut through that. And I don't see the will coming from this justice. Who knows? I mean, they can be surprising. Sometimes the justice is quite independent. Mm-hmm. But I mean, even with what we've got, we're seeing, I don't think it's going to be groundbreaking. We're seeing all of this stuff coming out in committee meetings, in Senate, all over the place, that the government was in panic. They were scrambling. They can't justify why they did it. But I hate to say it, but it doesn't seem to be inflaming the public anyways. So, I mean, this will come through. It might show a few embarrassing things, and then they'll put the report up on a shelf, and we won't hear about it again. I hate to be so cynical, but I don't see much coming of it.
No, I fear that's probably it. If you don't like, that's the way it is. Essentially on all sides of Canada, if you don't like someone, throw the book at them. Government overreach doesn't matter as long as you don't like that group. That's the way it runs.
Hate to say it.
Okay, well, that's it for today. We want to thank all of our Western Standard members for your support. Without you, we couldn't be doing what we're doing here today. If you're not yet a member of the Western Standard, please go to westernstandardonline.com. Click on membership. It's only $10 a month or $99 a year for unlimited access to all Western Standard content and to support independent, bailout-free Western media. That's it. That's all. Thank you guys for joining, and thank all of you for watching or listening today.